Hey everyone, Eric Forrester here, your next step strategist and the creator of the Add Your Lane project. Today, I'm excited to be talking with Bella Maree Lane, who's an expert in love, relationships, and intimacy. How are you, Bella?
Well, after that introduction, I'm absolutely great. You're way too generous, but thank you so much, Eric.
Well, I think you're welcome. I have a curious question to start with today. I just came to me a few minutes before we started.
Uh-oh.
In your role as an expert in this area, what are there some questions you get asked that make you smile or even make you laugh?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's one of the things that I most love about what I do is the area of love and relationship is tricky and yet it's so beautiful. And sometimes people's questions are so sweet and so innocent and they're just so wanting to get this area of their life more dialed in that, some of the times the questions are just super, super sweet.
Nice, nice. Because I can imagine. Well, let me ask it this way: are there um, are there misconceptions that people have about getting counseling in relationships and intimacy? Are there things that maybe keep people from reaching out to someone like you?
Oh, for sure. And going back to your question, I guess the original question, one thing I would like to say, and this surprises people, my belief is that relationships are actually not here to make us happy. And it does seem a lot of the questions that I'm asked and the direction that people are going in, sometimes people have a misconception that if you're in love, you're in this great relationship, or that if you're trying to find a relationship, the idea is that you're going to find your soulmate and that's it. They will complete you and you'll just live happily ever after. And that makes me smile, not in a condescending, pejorative way, but it is not at all my understanding or my belief. My belief is quite different than to that. My belief is that relationships, deep, intimate relationships, or any relationship actually, is here to help us grow. And we grow often a lot deeper and a lot quicker when things are painful and difficult because we're trying to figure it out. When things going easy peasy, we enjoy it, but it's not really such an impetus for growth. When things start to gyrate and go sideways and get a little bit cattywampus, I think that's a lot of times motivation. And sometimes people are afraid to come to me because they're worried that they're going to hear something about either themselves, their partner, or their relationship that's going to mean the relationship is terminal or that it's not going to work out or that there's something happening that they're not seeing. So I think people get afraid. I think they get a little afraid of looking at themselves. A lot of times people are good at looking at the other person and noticing how they could do things better and differently and what's wrong with them in inverted commas. It's like the fish in the water. We don't always see our own part quite so clearly. So that's where a coach or a love expert, relationship expert is able to help us take some of the veils away so that we can see our own behavior and our participation because you absolutely cannot change another person. It's hard enough to change yourself. So you have to really start with what's here.
Do you find that when people enter in a conversation with you, maybe before the coaching has actually begun, just when they're trying to feel it out, and you let them know that it's normal for relationships to have growing times, as you said, that maybe are uncomfortable. When they hear you, I guess maybe give them permission for that. What do they? How do they respond?
Usually with a big sigh of relief. And yesterday, in fact, this happened with a new client. And I know that this person was feeling incredible trepidation about what was going to happen. And in this person's mind, they'd come out with some quite negative scenarios. And after an hour was, I could tell, wanted the conversation to keep going, and was feeling complete relief that it wasn't going to be about finding blame, casting aspersions, things having to end. It was about finding what's working. It was about understanding where some things could do with some change, negotiation, a little bit of compromise. But all in all, super, super positive. Now, sometimes it's not always that way, just to be really fair. Not every relationship has those great qualities, and that is sad. But most of my clients are phenomenal, and they just kind of get a bit off track. And when you get off track and you don't realize it, sometimes you just get further and further off track. So it's about coming back, figuring out what you really love and like about each other, going back to that, and then figuring out what the pieces are that need to be adjusted, and where you can make some changes that work for both people.
Yeah, yeah. With the fact that you're an expert in this area, does anything come up that surprises you?
Gosh, I don't know that I would say it necessarily surprises me. What would I more say? Maybe I find people's naivety sometimes. It's sweet and endearing, and yet occasionally I find it slightly scary. If I'm really honest, I feel, I don't mean scary in the way of like horror movie scary. I really mean in the way that I feel, oh gosh, I really want to help them understand this, because that's probably not going to work out very well for them. And I feel as though I want to get my flashlight out and put it on the road in front of them and help them understand how they got where they are, what are the choices they could have to help them begin to go, oh, right, I didn't, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't, I don't. And so that's my job.
Mm. So they realize, especially if they experience that their situation is engaging you immediately, they realize that they have a collaborator with them. Well,
Absolutely. I always, and I can say this with every last drop of my heart, hold the highest vision for my clients. I see them the way they truly are. And I see them once I have a vision for them of, once, the person understands this and can start working on these things. It's a little bit like, I use the analogy when the statue of David was carved. Michelangelo didn't see a block of marble. He really saw the statue, and what he did was chip away at the parts that were anything but the statue. And so with my clients, with myself, with life, what I'm looking at all the time is how we do that. How do we refine who we are? How do we become better versions? And I hold a vision for my clients of how they want their best version to be, not my version of them, but whatever I hear from them is their aspiration. That's the vision I hold and keep. And I make sure my clients keep that vision.
you know, I was reading your about me section on your website, and I was taken with you telling your story, and where you mentioned that you went to couples therapy by yourself.
Oh
And
gosh.
I'm curious, when a person from a relationship comes to you clearly wanting something to change, and the other person isn't there, how do you do, what do you do in that situation?
Well, it happens sadly more than you would think. And it does break my heart a little, because it's very challenging, quite honestly. When one person is wanting to do the work and wanting to understand and wanting things to be in a better way, it is more challenging because if the other person is resistant to what's going on, that's a little bit like rowing a boat with one oar. Now, not impossible. And what I always tell my clients that come to me with this is, number one, it's for their growth. So even if the partner doesn't want to come, they will still learn. And we cannot change another person. There is absolutely no possibility of that. It's hard enough, as I said earlier, to change yourself when you put all of the effort in. I mean, we all know what it's like to start a diet and fail, and all the different things. What happens though, and this is 100% guaranteed, when we begin to change, modify behaviors, do things in a different way, have a different perspective, whatever it might be, when we approach situations in a different way that's authentic and it's not a manipulation, the other person's response highly, highly, highly likely will be different, because people respond to the way that we are. Now, I'm not saying we cause things, but people respond, and you'll see one person might be angry with one person and you watch them with someone else and they're completely different for all kinds of reasons. But in a relationship, if you're doing certain things and you're just looking at your behavior, and we can look and see some ways that perhaps it's not working, or it's suboptimal behavior, it doesn't really work for you, and you would like to change that for yourself, what happens is when you start to do things differently, your partner will notice. Now, to be perfectly clear here, they may not like it. Most of the times it works out really well. They may not like it because if they're involved in a dynamic that's they do things their way, you do things your way, and it doesn't work. Sometimes people are involved in that kind of argumentative situation and they want that. So when you begin to change, that might actually irritate them and aggravate them. So I'm not implying that when you change, everything will be roses. What I'm saying, though, is a lot of times when we start to take responsibility, see things differently, change our behaviors according to what feels true for us, not according to how we change the other person will notice, and then their response to that will be different. So I think it's important that we absolutely stay authentic and we stay very clear that we're in therapy, we're in counseling, we're in whatever you want to call it, because we want to make fundamental changes for ourselves. And if that benefits the relationship and work and family, that's fantastic. But you primarily have to do it for yourself, and then everything else is kind of gravy.
I can imagine that. I can imagine that you will sometimes get a person who has maybe been waiting for years for the other person to change, and and then they speak to you and they begin to realize, oh my God, well, they might feel sad that they waited so long, but then they realize, wait a second, I can begin to do this right now. And they overcome that fear. Is fear too strong a word for that, do you think?
No, no, not at all. I think that a lot of fear comes up because in psychological terms, we would call it triggering an abandonment wound. If you're going into an area that could possibly fracture your relationship or fracture your sense of self, that can raise a lot of fear, because often people are in a double bind in relationships. There's things that they want about it and there's things that they don't, and those two things are in opposition, and you're not going to be able to get one without the other, because the spaghetti has the meat sauce on it. You don't get without the meat sauce. And so what happens is people don't want to leave, but they don't want it to stay the same. And so that can be very distressing for both people, or for the person that's feeling that. They want it to be different. But a lot of times it's also because they're wanting the other person to be different. If we can take the attention away from the other person for a little while and notice what we're doing, how we're feeling, what we're needing, and it sounds a little narcissistic. It's not narcissistic. It's about getting really clear about the difference between your needs and your expectations, what's being met, what's not, what we could do about it, the ways of going about, there's all kinds of things. But yeah, I think initially there's a lot of fear because a lot of people don't want their relationships to end. They just want them to be better, and they don't know what to do.
Mm. So in the context of that, and I'm also aware that you work in the areas of tantra and some of those elements. I'm curious, if is there an art and a science to relationships?
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it more perfectly. There is definitely an art to communicating and learning how to weave everything together. And it takes some time, takes some experience. And then the science of it is what I study a lot in Tantra is about polarity. It's not a new thing. It's certainly definitely not something that I discovered, but it's very, very very accurate in terms of causing attraction is magnetic. So you have a north and a south pole, you have an alpha and an omega, and this has nothing to do with gender. The masculine and feminine lives inside of all of us. So again, has nothing to do with gender because we all have both. But in relationship, we will lean more to one side or the other. There are some people who are neutral, are neither, but most people tend to gravitate to one side or the other. And it's that this saying opposites attract, that's where that saying emanates from, because it's actually true. You don't want sameness when it comes to attraction. You want commonality and sameness in terms of sharing a house and having a life that's high functioning and going to the movies and going on nice vacations. When it comes to the intimacy and the romance, what you actually really want is different, because that's what creates the attraction. And you can have both. You can have amazing commonality, which is more the platonic friendship, and you can have ongoing, long lasting attraction that does not need to dissipate.
Oh, it's so exciting to hear the possibilities there. I think many of us, probably myself included, tended to think, oh, this is all going to be about this or all about that. And you're telling us today, Bella, that it's yes, it's about that, and yes, it's about that, and yes, it's about other things too. Some we can measure or feel immediately. Others are like, maybe planting a seed and hoping it's going to germinate. um, and sometimes we just have to wait for that, don't we?
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons, it's probably the main reason, I never ever feel bored with what I do, because I'm constantly learning. And I just did a big Tantra immersion for the last month. I did 50 hours. I could have done more, but I just seriously didn't have time. And it was so beautiful. And a lot of the people that were in that immersion have been studying this for 15, 20 years. Margot, who brought Tantra to the West, she was with Osho many, many moons ago, decades ago. Margot brought Skydancing Tantra, and Margot is now in her 70s, living in Bali. Incredible woman, so beautiful, so full of life. And Margot herself has been doing this for more than 45 years. Every single day, she said she learns something new, which keeps her very vibrant.
Yeah, I would think so. And and well, that said, you you've had a journey too. Could you tell us a little bit about the catalyst for your journey into this realm?
Into the Tantra realm or just the realm of healing?
I would say wherever you want to go. This is so fascinating. Maybe just give us a sense of how you entered and then encountered um, these different ideas.
Well, I have to say, growing up in Australia, I was out on my grandmother's back garden doing yoga at 14 when yoga was not a thing at all. It was kind of like, she's weird and what is she doing? And then in my early 20s, I was investigating everything to do with metaphysical crystals. It was when crystals all started to be kind of new and very new age. Now they're just very normal. And what led me into those things was I had a really very difficult childhood, a very unsafe childhood. And then in my early 20s, I was actually abducted and raped, which was a very intense and obviously distressing experience that I didn't really get the right help for. I decided I could deal with it. I got a little bit of help, and then I just pushed everything into the background and moved on. And then I also was in a catastrophic car accident at 29, and I spent almost 2 years learning how to walk and talk again. I was, they gave me no chance of survival. So those different things, this is not said to get any sympathy. Those things, though, were catalysts for me having to find something inside of myself, a certain resilience that I would never give up, that I would find a better way, that I would learn to walk again. And I really went into the world of therapy after my accident and decided to deal with some things that I hadn't. And that just started me on a journey. And then I got married, and sadly, as you know, I went to couples therapy alone. So that marriage did not work out. And when my marriage ended, I decided I would not have another relationship until I got myself absolutely sorted out as best I could before I would go out and make yet another choice that wasn't going to really make my heart happy. So I'm not blaming the other person for anything wrong. It was just not the right choice for me. And I made lots of wrong choices. And it was really due to the way that I had some things in my background that I hadn't really dealt with. And I just kept making choices thinking, oh, it was that person and it was their fault. And oh, they did this to me. I was very much in the victim kind of space, thinking that the world was doing things to me, that people were doing things to me, because when I was younger, things were done to me. So I kind of learned to be a victim. And so I decided, enough, I'm going to unlearn being a victim, which was a lot trickier, a lot more complicated than I thought. It was deeper than I realized, but I just kept going in the journey until finally it just piece by piece by piece, things fell away. And then I started to see things more clearly. Mostly I started to see myself more clearly. And today I'm definitely no longer a victim.
Well, in fact, it sounds like this those experiences, which um, many people, any one of those experiences could have, uh, who knows, been reason to say, I'm done, had enough, and you've worked through those. Can you say, if it's not too probing, can you say a little bit more about how they brought you to this work you're doing now?
My greatest passion is to, I don't want to use the word help, but my greatest passion is to share my experiences, my knowledge. I've done hundreds, literally, of workshops and certifications and trainings with some incredible teachers, some who are no longer with us, some who still are, who helped me transform my life. And so, what I want to do now, my passion and my purpose, is to share with other people the things that I've learned. And also, I do a little bit of a mix, which isn't something that's quite so common, and help other people to transform their life, not to give up, to realize that you can go for your dreams, that it's absolutely not just possible, it will happen if you do the work. So that's my passion, is to really inspire and encourage people to do the inner work so that they can get the outer result that they want, because everything starts in here. And I think sometimes people get it a little back to front. They think it starts out there. You know, if we find someone, they'll complete us. If I just get this job or this car or this house, or I have the X amount of money, those things are nice. But we all know they won't help if you've got a wound inside. That's something that's your work to do.
That this work inside, I'm curious, is is there a time, a time in life when it's too late to do the work?
I would answer that with one word: never. It's never, never, never too late. I think working on yourself, understanding something more, you could be 99, over 99, and still, if you're here, there's a reason. Absolutely, that's my belief. And I know that healing is possible for everybody. And it's so important because if we want the world to be a different place, it has to start with us. There's a little story I'll tell you, and I hope it's okay that I share this. There was a huge storm, and during the storm, hundreds of thousands of starfish got washed up onto the beach. And of course, they weren't surviving, all of them, because they can't survive out of water. And there were two friends wandering along the beach, and one of them was bending down, picking one starfish up and throwing the starfish back into the water, and bending down, doing it again, and just, every step would pick up another one and another one. And the friend said, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And they said, "Well, I'm throwing them back into the water." And the friend said, "But there's thousands of them. You're never going to be able to save them all. And it's not going to make a difference." And the friend said, "It does to the one I throw back." So I look very much at healing ourselves. You never know what impact that will have on the people that are in your environment, that are around you, whether it's at work, at home, your relationship, family, extended. How we are vibrates out into the universe. And if we want a more loving, gorgeous, connected, healthy planet, it really is up to all of us to do our personal work as well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Uh, I've saved the most challenging question for last, Bella.
Lucky
So,
me.
uh, love is a word that we use all the time. I use it, and I don't know if we use it correctly, or sometimes I'm speaking for myself. I know that I'm using it with deep meaning and intention, and other times I'm not so much. In all honesty, what does the word, or what does love mean to you?
That's such a great question. And I just did an Instagram post about this, in fact, a couple of days ago. You sure you didn't cheat and look at
I
my?
didn't know.
Okay. Well, I did say that love has become a rather diluted word, and that when we talk about love, we really need to reserve it with some reverence. So, love for me is not something that can be described as much as we might like to try, because love is experiential. It's not a thing, it's a feeling. And as a feeling, it would be like trying to describe the color red to a person who's never had sight. You really can't describe something like that. And so love is an experiential thing, and it does absolutely come from the heart, and it's a body feeling. There's a certain energy that's generated by that feeling of love. And I think sometimes love and lust get a little confused or merged together, and sometimes they are together. Sometimes they're absolutely not, and the person is thinking that one is the other. But I know that love is experiential, and it's the highest form of human expression that we can possibly ever had. And I think the longest journey you'll ever take is from your head to your heart, the 18 inches from your head to
Mm.
your heart, or 12 inches, depending how tall you are. But I do think that's the longest journey, is to go from here to here. And that's part of what I help people with, is not to be so heady about everything, but more to be in their heart and in their feelings. So you can be both, but to know when to come from the heart.
Oh, that's beautiful. I guess you could say then that the next step for someone who's working with you is actually to go a little more inside than they've been before, a little closer to the heart.
I definitely encourage when it's right and at the person's pace, because everyone is completely unique. But definitely my focus is this way,
Yeah.
is to have the person go inside. And some people confuse that with becoming narcissistic. It's not. It's about, for me, the word intimacy means into me I see. I use that a lot because once you really understand yourself, you don't need as many barriers and you don't need as many defense mechanisms. You really understand yourself. So you know your boundaries, you know what's important, and you're able to relax more because when you're with another person, you don't need all of those defenses because you know that you can pretty much take care of your needs. You know where your boundaries are and you move from there so you can relax more.
Thank you. That's another word that I think is challenging. We say intimacy, we say it and we don't know. You just gave it so much clarity.
Well, thank you.
And it's been a pleasure speaking with you today, Bella. And I hope we can speak again sometime soon.
It was amazing, Eric. And thank you for being such a generous host.
Well, it's my pleasure. We'll talk soon.
We will. Love and light.